Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the epic story of India's river systems. We'll be exploring how these massive waterways are, well, literally the veins and arteries shaping the nation's geography, its ecology, and its history. Let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the anatomy of a river, then classify India's drainage systems. After that, we'll check out the art of river patterns, explore the birth of the Himalayan drainage, zoom in on the Indus and Ganga, and finally, talk about saving these sacred waters.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a River, the Foundations.
You know, every single drop starts somewhere. Our first crucial term here is the catchment area. Put simply, this is the specific stretch of land from which a river collects and drains its water. Think of it as the ultimate gathering ground for a river's lifeblood.
Now, when we scale that concept way up or way down, we get macro and micro water systems. The term river basin is reserved for the massive catchments of large, dominant rivers. They cover huge geographical areas. On the flip side, watersheds are the catchments of tiny rivulets and rills, covering significantly smaller areas. It's the exact same basic mechanism, just operating on vastly different scales.
But the absolute crucial point to take away here is this concept of unity. You literally cannot isolate one part of a drainage system. A change upstream, like say a new obstruction, a bit of pollution, or a shift in flow, it inevitably changes the entire living system downstream. They act as perfectly unified, interconnected wholes, which, by the way, is exactly why they make such perfect boundaries for regional planning.
Moving on to Section 2, Classifying India's Drainage, by the numbers. Take a look at this stark continental divide, 77% to 23%. This massive split is driven by elevated physical barriers. We're talking about the Delhi Ridge, the Aravallis, and the Sahyadris. These geological features act like a giant wedge, forcing a staggering 77% of the drainage area, including absolute heavyweights like the Ganga and Brahmaputra, to rush east, right into the Bay of Bengal. Meanwhile, only 23%, which includes systems like the Indus and Narmada, discharges westward into the Arabian Sea.
If we break these drainage basins down by sheer size, you'll see 14 heavyweights absolutely dominate the landscape. A major river basin has a catchment area exceeding 20,000 square kilometers. There are only 14 of these, but they pack a punch, including giants like the Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Krishna. Then we have medium basins, 44 of them, falling between 2,000 and 20,000 square kilometers. And finally, there are numerous minor basins, under 2,000 square kilometers, which you'll mostly find in areas of low rainfall.
Next up, Section 3, The Art of River Patterns, Nature's Blueprints.
So rivers don't just flow in straight lines, right? They carve these totally fascinating geometries into the earth. The first is the dendritic pattern. Viewed from above, it beautifully mimics the sprawling, organic branches of a giant tree. This happens when rivers flow over rock that offers uniform resistance to erosion, and it's incredibly common in the vast, flat expanses of India's northern plains.
Now contrast that with the radial pattern. Picture a bicycle wheel with spokes. In this pattern, water basically bursts outwards from a central elevated high point, like a hill or peak, and flows in literally every direction. The rivers cascading down from the Amarkantak Range, they give us a textbook example of this radial explosion of water.
Then we have the trellis pattern, which honestly looks almost engineered. It's this highly organized grid where primary tributaries flow parallel to each other, guided by alternating bands of hard and soft rock. But the real dead giveaway, it's the secondary tributaries. They intersect these primary rivers at sharp, striking 90-degree angles.
Finally, let's look at the centripetal pattern. This is essentially the exact opposite of the radial pattern. Instead of flowing outward, the rivers here discharge their waters from all the surrounding higher grounds inward, ultimately pooling together to fill a central basin, a depression, or a lake. All right, let's jump into Section 4, Birth of Himalayan Drainage, a geological epic. Okay, this is wild. These ancient rivers weren't just passively flowing along, they were violently forced into their current paths by massive, planetary-scale tectonic shifts over millions of years. First, as the Himalayas pushed upward, the rivers essentially kept pace by eroding the rising rock, carving out giant, deep gorges. Later on, the uplift of the Polar Plateau, which includes the Delhi Ridge, acted as a massive physical barrier that decisively separated the Indus and Ganga drainage systems.
And then, during the mid-Pleistocene period, a crazy event called the downthrusting of the Malda Gap basically pulled the rug out from under the land between the Malda Hall Hills and Meghalaya Plateau. This permanently diverted the mighty Ganga and Brahmaputra toward the Bay of Bengal. And it's exactly this highly dynamic, ancient history that gives some of these rivers a rebellious, almost uncontrollable personality today. Take the river Kosi, infamously known as the Sorrow of Bihar. Because it is an antecedent river, meaning it was actually there before the mountains fully rose, it drags down staggering quantities of sediment from the high Himalayas. It drops so much of this sediment in the plains that it literally blocks its own path, forcing the water to violently change course and flood the surrounding areas.
Moving right along to Section 5, the Indus and Ganga, the protagonists.
Over 1.1 million, actually 11,065,000 to be exact. That massive number is the total square kilometers of the Indus River Basin. This mind-blowing scale easily secures its place as one of the largest river basins in the entire world. The Indus is just so deeply embedded in the region's history. It's actually born from a glacier in Tibet at an altitude of over 4,100 meters, where it's fiercely known as Singhi Kamban, or the Lion's Mouth. Interestingly enough, within India, it flows exclusively through Jammu and Kashmir. As it journeys onward, it gathers staggering strength from its tributaries, the largest being the Chenab, also known as the Chandrabhaga, and before heading out of the region completely, it unites with the famous Panjnad, which is the combined waters of the Sutlej, Beas, Ravi, Chenab, and Jhelum.
Now, on the other side of the continental divide, 2,525. That is the length in kilometers of the mighty Ganga. With a basin covering about 8.6 lakh square kilometers just within the country's borders alone, it stands as the absolute largest river system in India. The Ganga's birth is this complex web of powerful waters growing in scale. Seriously, it doesn't even start as the Ganga. It begins as the Bhagirathi from the Gangotri Glacier. It only earns its legendary name when it violently collides with the Alaknanda River at Devprayag. From there, it sweeps through the plains, building immense momentum. The Yamuna, rising from the Yamunotri Glacier, flanks it as its westernmost and longest tributary, eventually joining it at Prayag. To the south, the Son River feeds right into its bank. The system is so incredibly vast that it absorbs wild offshoots like the Damodar River. The Damodar flowed through a rift valley and flooded so relentlessly it was once called the Sorrow of Bengal before finally being tamed by modern dam projects.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Saving the Sacred Waters, Modern Conservation. So after millions of years of natural engineering, carving through solid rock and shaping entire continents, these critical veins of the nation now face their greatest and most rapid threat, us. In response, the Union government launched the Namami Gange Programme back in June 2014. This is a massive, integrated conservation mission with two main goals: stopping pollution and completely rejuvenating the river. And it's not just about scooping some trash off the surface. We're talking about a multi-pronged attack. They're building heavy sewage treatment infrastructure, strictly monitoring industrial waste, planting aggressive afforestation along the banks to hold the soil, and pushing crucial public awareness deep down to the village level with the Ganga Gram initiative. As we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a pretty vital realization. These unified river systems and watersheds have perfectly adapted to the Earth's shifting crust over literally millions of years. But they are vulnerable. We now understand the profound ways these ancient waters have physically and culturally shaped India. So the ultimate question we are left with is this: will we step up to be the stewards of these ancient life forces, or will we be the generation that chokes the very veins of India? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.